Hey everyone, Genome here, coming at you with the next episode of Was It Good? I'll be once again delving into another in the long line of the Friday the 13th movies, which will help kind of capstone my hack and or slash category of Was It Good? I've already gone over episodes 1, 2, and 3, and so chronologically speaking, I should be coming out with 4, which I actually am. So we are going to take a look today at Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter. And let's find out if it's really going to be final after all. Spoiler alerts. Maybe. Anyway, we jump right into one of the most epic title screens I've ever seen in my life. Preceding that, of course, was the invariable montage of previous films. I really dislike how they keep doing this. They keep padding the runtime with between 4 and 10 minutes, in some cases 15, of introductions to the last movie. Now this one's much better. It only is about 4 or 5 minutes of worth, but still, I mean, come on, by this point we know what's going on. Now granted, you know, no internet back then, so sometimes people had to be told the story of what was going on. But honestly, other than knowing the main character Jason, it's not really anything to know, you know? It's a slasher film. So, I mean, each one, while they tend to follow one after the other, actually there's a 5-year gap between number 1 and number 2. But after that, between 2 and 4, it's basically day after day after day. So, I don't know. Anyway, annoying but tolerable. So anyway, we go from such an epic title screen to what I consider probably the best cinematography in the entire series. This shot is really good. I can't show too much of it, of course, because of fair use and all. I'll just show you a little clip, but it's really, what's the word I'm looking for? Ambitious for a movie like this with no budget. It's one long-range shot. It's probably close to a minute long. And for anyone who knows anything about movies and cinematography, it's very difficult to get a busy scene lined up and do it all in one continuous take. Obviously, they probably couldn't do it too many different times because, once again, the director's commentary, and this is pretty hilarious because they keep telling you about how bad the budget was, and the execs just pull the plug on all their ideas because they didn't want to put any money into it. We're talking later on. There's a part in there where he mentions that they didn't want to buy a bigger tent for the scene where they're both sitting in the tent. So the tent they got was really small, and they had to like stick the camera right up in the actors' faces because the studio exec would not shell out $150 for a bigger tent. So yeah, that's what they were up against. But anyway, the scene's really good, man. It's like, it starts off with a helicopter spotlight coming down, and it meanders through basically the set of the last movie, and then finally winds up upon Jason. Down there in the barn. So it's real good. A lot going on. Vehicles moving around. People are walking around doing their jobs. And the lighting and all that had to be just right. And it's probably very difficult to light this scene. As like I said, it's a long distance and you don't see any lighting. And it's pretty good panning shots. You see a lot of the sides of the shot there. Apparently they managed just by putting the crane, or putting the cameraman on a crane, which was lowered down, and then he stepped off with a Steadicam and kind of walked it the rest of the way. But excellent work. And like I said, for a horror movie, it definitely goes above and beyond what they had to do. We start with a little bit of description of what happened, as I guess the on-site coroner or whoever, or pathologist, not pathologist, but on-site crime scene investigator, that's what I'm looking for, is kind of going over what this guy did last night, basically for during the events of Friday the 13th Part 3.
This the guys believe in the wet stuff?
Yeah. This time he got 7 kids and 3 bikers.
This time they got him.
And of course it segues into the obligatory jump scare, of which there's a few in this movie. From here, we follow Jason's body to the morgue. There's several scenes that kind of allude to Jason being not quite deceased, but this kind of segues into probably the funniest character, or not even probably, the funniest character in this movie. That's Axel, played by Bruce Mahler. And boy, he's something. You can't even describe this guy. You gotta just, I'll show you a little bit of him here.
Sign it. This your last?
Got one more over there.
I mean, just you got to see this guy in his entirety to appreciate the job that Bruce did with him. So kudos. It's too bad he couldn't be in the movie longer, but you know, he's like the meteorite flying across the sky. He flashes brightly, but very fast. Of course, Axel, being the horn dog cag that he is, has a bit of a liaison here with a very attractive nurse who meets him in the morgue for a fun time. Interesting dynamic they got going on there. This kind of leads into her skedaddling because there's another jump scare that makes you think he's alive.
Jesus Christmas!
And she vacates to leave him alone to make it easier. There's a really cool scene here where he's loading Jason into the refrigeration unit, you know. And the very last shot, you see just a little smoke coming out of his mouth. On the exhale, like it's supposed to be cold in there. So that's really creepy and cool. I like how they did that. Apparently they did that shot because they couldn't get a refrigerated unit. Once again, budget. So they... he just took a big toke of a cigarette and then released the smoke out, blew the smoke out at the end of that scene. So pretty cool. I like when they do simple fixes for little shots like that. So unfortunately, the Lothario Axel has to meet his demise, but at least he does it doing what he loves. And man, we kick off this movie with a brutal kill. Let's talk about that a little bit in this episode. Jason is pissed. I think he gets mad about being getting put out of the game for even one night and letting one of them get away, I guess. I don't know what it is, but he has no chill in this movie, man. His kills are brutal. Both Axel and the poor nurse scene here. Are definitely on the very bad end of Jason's anger. So this is not something you see in other movies. Even Third, when he was pretty brutal, he was kind of mechanical about things. In this one, he grunts a little bit, and you can see him quivering a little bit, and he's angry. And so that was Ted White. I think it was his idea to portray him as a little more aggressive and a little more, not so much vengeful, but just, I don't know, angry. But we'll get into more of that later. So we cut over and meet the main family, the protagonist family in this movie. That's the Jarvises. You know, Mom, Big Sis, and Little Tommy Jarvis.
Did you hear any more about the place next door?
Mm-hmm. It's been rented by some kids.
Great. How many?
6.
Well, you know, it'd be nice to have some company.
Two of the characters get, you know, a decent amount of airtime. One of them is Kimberly Beck, Trish, one of the final girls in this movie, as Big Sister, and in his very first, I believe, on-screen role, we have none other than Corey Feldman as Tommy Jarvis. So, wow. Getting back to 1984, by the way. So this is pre-Goonies, pre-everything, before he really made his mark. So, you know, Trish is an alright character. She's kind of stilted and wooden. She does play a good scream queen later on. And she's a pretty good final girl at the end, but up until then it's kind of first day of acting school. No, I'm not trying to be mean about it. I just they don't give her a lot to do, so I don't really think it's completely her fault. Of course, Corey Feldman is a really good child actor. He's got nuance, even though he's kind of annoying in this movie. It's just the writing. It's not anything against him. I mean, they wrote a little kid, and so he had to behave like a little kid, you know. But he's real good. He's much better than the standard child actor. So apparently there was a lot of tension on this set with the director and Mr. Feldman. So apparently Mr. Feldman had a rather bad attitude, according to Ted White, who plays Jason, throughout the screening here. But you know, I mean, he's like so young. I mean, it's hard. I mean, you feel for the kid. And he's working nonstop, you know, and then taking school or whatever during the daytime. So, you know, what's going to happen? I don't know. But anyway, so we meet the other batch of Jason Candy coming down the road, stuffed into a great big old station wagon, which I dig. I like that. Reeks of old road trips, you know. Basically, the new group of teens, most of them are kind of faceless and bland. Some of them don't get really much of any screen time, or if they do, there's like almost no dialogue, so you don't learn a whole lot about these people. But a couple of the standout ones that actually have some airtime are Jimmy, who is played by Crispin Glover, Lawrence Moneson, who plays Teddy, and Barbara Howard, who plays Sarah. Those three, I think, get the most I don't know, character building, I guess you would say. You learn a little bit more, makes them tick. You know, there's one girl in there who her whole gestalt is, you know, just being the town bicycle, you know. But none of them play anything badly. It's just that some of them didn't have a lot to work with. Crispin Glover and Lawrence Moneson, otherwise known as Teddy and Jimmy, have kind of the antagonistic friend kind of dynamic going on. Crispin plays a pretty decent part. He's kind of vulnerable and open to suggestion and very self-conscious. Not much confidence in his makeup. And then you got Teddy, the overcompensating douchebag. I couldn't wait for this guy to get it. Unfortunately, he lasted a long time. Once again, that's probably the actor just doing what's written. Man, he was annoying. He was not a sympathetic character at all. He was just a jackass. Yeah, I'm sure most of the crowd was happy to see him go.
I think when we get to town, I should call Betty. Jimbo, calling Betty is definitely a dead fuck thing to do.
But everyone knows someone like this guy, you know, the big shit talker who has never really done anything he's talking about, you know. He thinks he's God gives to women, and no, he's not. Barbara Howard as Sarah was really, I think, pretty good and vulnerable. She played the good girl who just comes into her own and blossoms into womanhood out there by Crystal Lake. Once again, she wasn't getting a ton to work with, but she did get a little bit of character trait building. And while it's obvious that she's acting because of some of the longer pauses that they build in for dramatic effect, she does real well with it. And I like her. She seems vulnerable and naive, and I like her. So, good job, Barbara. So from there on, we get Jason. Somehow he gets out of the hospital. Apparently, we find out later that they've never found the bodies in the hospital. Somehow, there's got to be blood everywhere. But whatever. Apparently, he hid them somewhere. I don't know. But anyway, he's on his way back to Crystal Lake, of course, and he runs across the handy-dandy hitchhiker going to Canada. So once again, we get to see Jason angry. Jason did not have his coffee this morning. Jason, got docked extra pay at the factory for coming in late for a shift or something. I don't know, but he definitely takes it out on this poor hitchhiker. I mean, you hear him back there just exerting effort. It's like, oh man, this is not the man with whom to mess with. Let's just say that for this movie. After the obligatory teenagers going out for a skinny dip scene, of which Tommy, as walked by. A lot of times there's nudity in this movie, and Tommy is present to see it. Of course, he wasn't there because he was underage. You know, he was just talking or emoting to a camera, but disturbing in its own right. But kind of cute, you know, how sister tries to protect him and mom tries to protect him from all that stuff. But we established that for some reason a faulty solenoid will make a car stop. I've never heard this before. I've started cars many times by arcing the solenoid, but whatever. It's a horror movie. But anyway, the car stalls, which leads us into meeting one of the next protagonists, and that's Rob, who's played by Eric Anderson.
Okay, give it a crank.
Rob, they set him up to look like the obligatory mountain man. You know, he's got his tucked in flannel, and he's got a knife in his boot, and he's got his big hiker's pack on with his rifle, and he's gonna go out hunting, right?
Rob Dyer.
But he gets him back on the road, and Trish is obviously smitten with the guy already, because she's like, all right, get in the car. And the man with a knife in his friggin' hand. I'll take you where you're gonna go. In fact, I'll take you back to the house.
You need a lift?
This is further compounded by some very awkward dialogue that goes on in the car. Well, the guy's... I don't know if he's supposed to be a red herring here of sorts, or the writers weren't paying much attention to what was his line was, but it's like, it makes it sound like he's out looking for kids to butcher or something.
You can't be hunting for bear.
How about kids? Are any kids, vacationers, people like that?
But anyway, yeah, well, it's neither here nor there. Also, one side note is, I'm not sure how old Tommy's supposed to be in this movie, but probably between 8 and 10, and Trish sends him out to fix the car.
Can you fix it? Need a screwdriver.
I mean, that's not the only instance in this movie. They had to try to make him fix the lights in the house, like down in the breaker box room, when everyone leaves him alone repeatedly. I was like, what? Is this kid a whiz kid or what? I know he's good at masks and stuff. We established that here soon. That's his thing. He's like a Tom Savini wannabe. Also, Tom Savini did the effects in this movie, which is why they're so good. Yeah, I just thought that was kind of funny. The poor kid, he knows what a solenoid is, so he's obviously a mechanical genius. All right, so now we've gotten all that little bit out of the way. You know, Rob runs off to go camp in the woods, even though he's been invited to stay with Trish, whom they've shown the house to, this random stranger hitchhiker with weaponry. But I guess he's a good guy, and he's attractive enough to Trish, so bring him on home to show Mom. So we're moving on. So the it's nightfall now. Teens are starting to ramp up the party, and so what better great way to ramp up the party in is than to put on some music and let's just say bust out some dance moves that are sure to attract those of the opposite sex. Fun fact here is that supposedly this is actually, while it's ad-lib, this is supposedly how Crispin danced out there in LA and some of the clubs out there, and he had his own peculiar style. Hey man, each their own. It stands out. You wouldn't remember some other nonsense, you know, standard dance. You remember his dance very well. He's legend. And he went on to have somewhat of a pretty good film career after this, so good on you, man. Apparently he was actually dancing to AC/DC in the background, not the song that you hear on the movie. So now that it's been 10 minutes or so, we need to start getting some bodies falling. So, you know, off we go. You know, we got the angry girl runs out, and everyone likes to skinny dip at night by themselves, you know, in dark waters. It's very, very fascinating. But she goes out there, and much to her chagrin, the man she wants to come out and meet her is not him. And this leads into, well, a fairly brutal scene that was cut extensively after it was shot. And unfortunately, what's left, her facial expression is a little bit weird, but I mean, I guess, how else do you do it? So apparently this is another example of a lot of tension on the set. Apparently, it was like 40 degrees outside, and the water is freaking freezing. And this poor actress was out there for hours. Just for her contribution to that alone, we'll go ahead and let you know who she is. That's Judy Aronson playing Samantha. So yes, apparently she was out so long in the water that she wound up getting and being wet out there in this raft. She actually got hypothermia. And Ted White, the man who plays Jason in this, he's also a stunt guy of old. He threatened to quit. He was having it out with the director Joe Zito, and so apparently it got pretty tense there. But you know, she's a trooper. She finished the scene, and from then on out, another guy, her boyfriend, comes out and decides to go make up for it. But he goes for a swim too. So I don't know how long he was in the water, but he was out there wet too. And unfortunately, just when he makes it back to shore, he is has one of the most gruesome deaths in these series just visited upon him. This one's wince-inducing. I mean, that's hard to watch, isn't it? I mean, as a man, for me, that's really hard to watch, you know. But yeah, once again, remember, Jason has no chill. I will say that, man, well, in most Friday the 13th movies, it's like this, but Jason has some great teleportation skills. He knows where everyone's going to be in this. Maybe a little more in this one than some other ones. He just happens to be in the right place at the right time all the time. So, and it's funny though, we see him later on in the movie, not much later on, as chronological goes, and he's bone dry. So, I also find it funny that the raft was still floating by the time the guy swam out there, since it was completely punctured and sliced up. I mean, those things tend to lose air fast. But hey, who's looking at this stuff, right? I'm overthinking things. So during the party, one of the, I'll call them the Doublemint twins, wants to go out and leave. One of them is upstairs with Jimmy. Jimmy's seductive raven dance or whatever seems to have won the day. But yeah, this one sister wants to go home, so she's going to go riding home even in the middle of a thunderstorm on her bicycle. And fun fact, if you look up really closely in the window, you can see the sister or whoever it is up there kind of look down on her to make sure she's getting out. Interesting. I mean, I never really noticed that before. This leads into an off-screen death. One of the few off-screen deaths in this. I think there's only two. One of them's completely off-screen, but I really like the way they do it in this one. It's just like a silhouette kind of death that lines up with a lightning strike. I'm sure a lot of people just want to see the gore. I don't care about the gore and stuff. That is not what moves me to watch a horror movie or whatever. But I like this one a lot. It's actually one of my favorite kills in the movie. It's got style oozing out of it, and it once again, it makes you wince because you hear the little crunch and you kind of see her jerk and all that as he shoves his harpoon or whatever it is through her. But then he sticks her to a wall, and no one actually hears that, but because they're all watching films inside. Don't ask me. Well, in a post-coital moment of braggadocio, Jimmy goes downstairs, kind of makes a jackass of himself, but he does rub it into Teddy. Well, that's worth it. Because Teddy he's not a sympathetic character. He, like, forcefully kisses one of the poor twins in this. He's just a jackass. But anyway, Jimmy wants to celebrate with a glass of wine. What a smooth operator. But yes, he kind of broadcasts his death pretty well. Luckily for the movie, we must suspend some disbelief here, but he manages to die silently, even though he takes a very interesting assortment of tools, at least that are involved in his death.
Ted! Hey, Ted, where the hell's corkscrew?
From there, Jimmy's paramour, she bites the big one. It's a cool scene. I'm not going to show you every death in the movie because I don't want to ruin it for you, but it's a pretty stylistic one. Once again, highlighting Jason's predestination and teleporting skills. From there, we go to another really cool kill. We're getting really low on teens here. Other than the two in the shower, Sarah and her boy, who has like two pieces of dialogue in the movie, so it's not really worth mentioning. Teddy meets his demise in a really interesting scene. It kind of reminds me of the old swashbuckler movies, you know, when they'll in the pirate things where they'll stick the dagger or knife into the sail and then kind of slide down the sail, you know. That's what this one reminds me of. But once again, a lot of style, so you gotta dig it. While all this is taking place, Trish has somehow found Rob's tent, and she's gonna look. She knows something's going on, so she goes down there to find Rob, see what kind of answer she can get. A lot of exposition right here, and he does interesting things to welcome her. Well, she doesn't seem to be too... she doesn't seem to mind too much his behaviors of asking about children and teenagers.
How about kids? Are any kids, vacationers, people like that?
Yeah, a bunch of kids moved in yesterday, right next door to us.
And being very mysterious and weapon-laden. But anyway, they share some exposition here. And meanwhile, Jason's going to finish off the rest of the teens. Poor Sarah is the last to get it after finding her boyfriend, the one she's in love with, but after their carnal relations. But yeah, she unfortunately bites it, and at this point, there's no one left except for a few of the Jarvises. And of course, Rob, but you know, more on that later. So something else interesting here. Somehow the power, I guess Tommy fixed the power because the power's back on at the house, but Jason, you know, kind of rips the friggin' phone box off the wall. Tough scenes, by the way. All these scenes are drenched in rain, so they had to bring in rain machines for everything, including all the windows and shadow shots. So that was really difficult, made things hard to work with. But I did notice it was strange how they stuck like some fingernail, really long, crusty, ugly, thick fingernails, prosthetics on Ted's hands. They weren't there in the last movies. So I don't know where those came from. That what the decision was, make him look more monstrous or something. I don't know. But so Jason, once again, he wanted to make sure no one else is coming, so he rips the phone strap off the wall, leaving them stranded, as it were. So they leave Tommy alone for the second time to guard the house. It's another famous, horror movie trope. They keep splitting up, but they keep leaving the kid alone. This poor kid, man. He's expected to fix the house, expected to fix the car, and expected to hold the fort against deranged serial killer, while they go off, leaving him there. But they take the dog with them to the house where the teens are basically gone. And a really odd choice here is they have Gordon, the dog, jump out of the window. I don't think it's supposed to be implied that Jason throws him through the window because Jason's in the basement. There's no way he can get down there between the two shots. We'll see it here in a minute. But yeah, Gordon jumps out the window, never to be seen again. Maybe he didn't get paid enough and he was just mad at his agent or whatever. But yeah, Gordon takes a powder. And down in the basement, Rob makes a mistake of going down there for his pig sticker. He's been down there for a while, and Jason just doesn't do anything until Trish is watching. But basically, he meets his demise. Some people think this is kind of a funny scene because he keeps, here. He keeps screaming out, "Oh my God, he's killing me! Run, run, run!" Apparently, this was sort of based on a real event. Happened, I think, in New York or something, where a guy was getting killed, and he was screaming for help, and no one would help him. There's people around there, and he, yeah, it was kind of a disturbing thing. So I think they kind of worked that angle in there. You don't really see Paul bite it, but you find out later that he's definitely a goner. So here's where Trish starts to avail herself a little bit. She's scared to death, and Jason's terrorizing her, but she keeps fending him off. And she actually attacks Jason pretty well here where he goes after Tommy, so it's kind of a believable scene. And I like, she's beating the hell out of poor Ted White. I'm sure it's hurting him because I believe he told her, you know, go at me hard in all her scenes. So, but she's out there defending little Tommy. Once again, this kind of shows Ted White's portrayal of Jason in this as being really aggressive and angry seeming. He just busts through the door. And he's running after Trish and Tommy, so it works. I think it's really effective. They show him in a lot of shots where he's right on him. So yeah, it's kind of unnerving. I like the way he is portrayed in this. You know, and continuing on, continuing on in esteemed Final Girl fashion, Trish is just laying it on Jason. Here she gets pretty inventive in let's just say a made-for-TV special. And we have some more cat and mouse here. They know Jason's not dead, but she has to creep by him, and then he tears off after her. So yeah, very, very unnerving. You know, so she goes in the other house, and you know, she won't step over a dead body or whatever to get away. It's kind of weird, but she goes upstairs, and he's right on her ass. I mean, he's ready to get her, and she makes a decision, and she jumps out. Of a second-story window and lands hard. Now, stunt woman did this in one take, and they did it all in one shot, so kudos to her, man. This looks like a hard one to do. She nailed it just right. So she goes back to the house, and Jason's still right on her, man. She can't get a moment to breathe. And once again, she's balanced up well. She does some serious damage to him. But Jason's just relentless, man. He finally gets his hands on her, and she freaks, man. She is screaming. She's beating at his face mask. She acts like somebody would act if a maniacal killer has been terrorizing her and he's going to kill her if she doesn't fight back. And so she does an excellent job here. I don't know what she channeled here, but you know, I can give her some props and forget a lot of the earlier acting when I watch, you know, scenes like this. So Tommy, you know, he devises a plan that kind of works his way to his skill set. Don't want to believe. He saw some of those newspaper clippings, so he tries to disguise himself as Jason and distracts Jason just long enough for Trish to unmask him with the machete shot. And then she drops the machete, and then it's up to Tommy to finish the job, which he does in great style. So, alright, Jason is no more, apparently. And another fun fact in this movie is where Tommy is seen kind of eviscerating him with the machete. It's actually him hitting sandbags. There's no stuntman or anything down there, so. But, yeah. So, yeah, he goes ham, and the next shots are in the hospital. Trish is laid up, and she meets Tommy again. So they kind of open the door here to imply that maybe Tommy's going to take on the mantle of Jason, because he opens his eyes, and they freeze it right there at the end with some creepy music, you know. So, yeah, that's the movie. So there's my semi-quick rundown of Friday the 13th Part 4. This movie used to be my second favorite of the Friday movies. After Friday the 13th Part 7 was all my favorite back then. So let's talk about some quick pros and cons. Pros, Jason is Jason in this movie. This might be the epitome of Jason in his human form, at least. He's fast, he's aggressive. he's no nonsense, man. He gets the kills done for the most part. He doesn't bother too much with cat and mouse, except for at the end, of course. I like Ted White's portrayal. His movements are on, and Jason makes a pretty scary protagonist, this one, as compared to some of the other ones. Especially when he turns undead, he's no longer scary. He just moves slow, and he's a pop-out kind of killer and teleporter. You know, the Jarvis family's pretty decent. They're all, you can almost picture them as being a family, so they're not too bad. You know, big props to Corey Feldman for once again being a child actor with such range. He's not asked to do too terribly much in this movie, but when he does great. He's better than some of the older actors, that's for sure. The teens are somewhat likable, but not. I don't sense the camaraderie in them as I did in teens from Part 3. So, to use my vernacular, to quote the vernacular, I find them serviceable, but other than a very select few of them, none of them really stand out that much. But that's more on the con side. But the pro, most of the cinematography looks pretty good. Outside of that first shot, though, and there's some more shots like over the water, there's not as much camera movement in this movie as there was like in Part 2 and 3 where Steve Miner did the directing. So, but it's, you know, it's all pretty good. Lighting is good. Sound's pretty good. Once again, they've toned down some of the string volume a little bit, so it's prevalent in the kill scenes or when Jason's around, but it's not overbearing. And the ending is pretty good. And the fact that they actually offed Jason and then just didn't even allude that he was still alive, because like in the end of 3, the final shot was on Jason pretty much, and which, even though he was not moving, it kind of leads one to think, well, maybe he can come back. And this one is, they only show him again after he's hacked up on the ground. So ending is pretty good in the direction that the series could take. The effects are real good. Tom Savini once again working. The Jason face was a little bit too much. I actually liked it better in 3. He didn't look as mega deformed. So he's much less scary when the mask is off in this. But all the gore effects and all that are real good, what you see of them in this movie. And most of the set design is pretty good too. They actually built the house of teenagers stayed in just for the movie. The Jarvis' house was actually just this existing house. It's still there, apparently. So some cons of this movie. The development of the Jason fodder, the teens, is not nearly as good. I didn't find them to have much camaraderie amongst each other. So they're kind of wooden and bland. Rob, what should have been a good challenge for Jason, was just tossed aside for the most part. I know they wanted to show Jason in this movie as really, really intimidating and really not the one to be messed with, and has no peer when it comes to physicality. They showed him, well, they didn't show it on screen, but they showed him like ripping a friggin' rifle apart with his bare hands and bending the barrel. But Rob didn't have much to do. Should have been a better fight scene with them. I'm sure there's budget constraints. Trish was fairly wooden until her final girl, time came around, and then she availed herself pretty well. But most of the other players in this weren't too good. Except for I love Bruce Mahler as Axel, the coroner in the hospital.
Got one more over there.
Real cute girl. Was.
Well, she still is.
It's pretty cool they showed Drew beating Jason Abbott element actually into a hospital. That was kind of cool. A lot of cutaways. Once again, that's not the fault of the direction. Once again, it's like the MPAA going nuts with the censorship. Outside of that, there's nothing really else wrong with this movie, and so we'll go ahead and lead into my actual rating. What do I think of this on my 5-star scale for Friday the 13th? Where do I put this movie? Well, I'm going to go ahead and give this movie a 3. This is really close to being a 4. Only one 4 I've given so far is part 2. Some of the acting really drags it down, unfortunately. There's a little bit of pacing and editing issues. There's some editing in here. It makes it almost look like for instance, when Sarah bites it, the way it jump edits right to a shot of Tommy on there almost makes it look like he's the one that actually killed her. Kind of odd thing. There's nothing really bad here, and it's actually a step above, I'd say, part 3. Not so much in acting and pacing and all that, but just in the pure Jasonness of the movie. Jason helps bump this up. His portrayal by Ted White is just great in this movie. Great silent protagonist, but like I said, he shows his pissed in this, so that bumps it up a little bit. So we'll go ahead and throw this as a 3-star movie. I don't think it's quite as good as 2 as far as the overall picture, but Jason definitely helps salvage this one, and it's good. It's close to being a 4. If I go with a 0.5, I'll give it 3.5. But yep, that's where it's at. So this used to be my second favorite one. Right now, it's probably 2 of the ones I've watched so far, so we'll see how it goes. We'll see if 7's as good as I remembered it. But anyway, that's gone on long enough. So yep, it's good, not great, but for a Friday the 13th movie, it's really good, I'd say. Leaning towards the great scale, but not quite there. Just better than average, right? So alright, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll have some more of these reviews coming up. Hopefully one per week, as is per usual. This one's a little behind, there's a lot to do. And we'll be getting into Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning, before you know it. Alright then, thanks for watching. Until next time, this is Gino, out.